Hey, what's up you guys? Today I'm doing my statistics video for 2021 and I absolutely love doing stats videos. I keep a spreadsheet through the whole year and it's all color coded and it's also nice and proper, and I just absolutely love at the end of the year making all these charts, making all these pie charts specifically. For some reason my brain can't handle other types of charts. I tried to make like a line graph this year to mix things up a bit. I don't know what a line graph is. I don't know how it works. I seen Falda, I think it was, do it, and I thought, oh, that looks nice, and I tried to do it, and the lines just weren't going where they were meant to go. So I basically all got pie charts and a couple bar graphs, but you know, that's what we do here on this channel. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this video, and I tried to make them all look really pretty with some colours and stuff. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and please subscribe, and let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to be looking down a little bit during this video because that's just like the nature of having to read statistics. But my total number of books that I read this year was 162. My total amount of pages was 45,387. My average book length was 280 pages, and I would say that's exactly right. Like when I was reaching for books this year, I noticed like consciously that I was always going for ones around that area just because I was in such a mindset this year of just wanting to read like as many books as possible and just picking up shorter books. But yeah, we'll talk about that in the whole book length area. But yeah, that's definitely like, as soon as that came up I was like, yeah. So the very first book I read this whole year was Rereads by Marissa Meyer. That's because I decided to start January 2021 with, you know, just a bunch of rereads of my favourite books I hadn't read since like 2019 or a couple from 2020. I just wanted to reread a lot of books and start the year off with some 5 stars, and I kind of done the same this year. Not the same level, I basically just read the Harry Potter books again this year because I was like still in the middle of my reread. But yeah, I just think it's a really nice way to start off January, this like strong with some 5-star books. The last book I read was The Gigolo by Francis Sagan. I actually should have looked about to say that, sorry. But this was one of those little mini Penguin Moderns, and it was just 3 little contemporary stories about, well, one was about a gigolo, one was about a woman whose husband is having an affair, and I can't remember the other one. The other one was just like someone that was depressed. I can't remember. So the oldest book I read this year was Memoirs of Fanny Hill by John Cleland, and this was released in 1748. And this was for my LGBT classics video. I read it because it's a very like sexual non-conforming. Like there was no sexuality really discussed. It was just like this woman should have sex with men, should have sex with women, like no one cared. There was men with men, which people cared about that a little bit, which was an issue. But yeah, I don't know, it was just really interesting. It was fun. It was like erotica, but from the 1700s, so it was kind of wild. The newest book that I read was Cytonic by Brandon Sanderson, which was released in November 2021, and this was the 3rd book in his Skyward series, which I thought was the 3rd book of a trilogy, and turns out it got to the end of the book and nothing had ended, and I was like, what the hell, and I looked up and it wasn't. So that kind of ruined my reading experience, but anyway, let me move on. My most read authors this year, so in first place we have Sylvia Plath with 7 books. This was 3 poetry books, The Bell Jar twice, a little short story, and is that 7? That's 6. I don't know what the other one was. Then we have Cassandra Clare with 6 books. We have Shauna Maguire with 6 books. We have Daphne du Maurier with 5 books. J.K. Rowling with 5 books, and Marissa Meyer with 5 books. So I think it's really interesting. I just want to say how all of those are female authors, because when we get to the gender bit later on, no spoiler, but a little spoiler, I've read more male authors. But what I realised was that I have been reading like a lot of books by female authors, but like the same ones, if you get what I mean. And the male authors, I'm reading like 1 book of theirs and then never reaching in for another book by them. So I just thought it was interesting and worth pointing out. But yeah, let's move on to the graphs now. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the books that I read each month. As you can see, it is pretty even apart from September. I don't know what happened in September. I just was not reading books apparently then. And I mean, we'll see on the next page as well. It's not even because the books were bigger, like I genuinely just wasn't reading books in September. So that's interesting, but otherwise I was pretty even, you know, between 11 and 16 for the majority of the year. February 17 was my highest, but yeah, pretty even. I'm trying in 2022 to read shorter books, like I just already said in my last thing. So no, sorry, longer books, because a lot of these were short books, and especially like the Penguin Moderns. Like this looks impressive, like 17 books in a month, but I bet like quite a few of those were those little 50-page Penguin Moderns. So when you think about it that way, it really changes things. So when you look at the pages read each month, as you can see, it is a little bit different. The August, for example, there's 12 books in August, which was up on the higher end, but it was my lowest page count. So I just think that's interesting how that can work out. And it was obviously just because I was reading a lot of those little 50-page books, and probably some poetry in August as well, if I remember correct. January was my best. I read over 6,000 pages in January, which was super cool. Don't see that happening again. That was just because I was on, well, for example, most of them were rereads, but then I was also reading some of the Shadowhunter books. Oh, I actually never talked about my last bit. My longest book, my shortest book. Okay, sorry, I'm going back a little second. So my longest book I read was Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare, and this was 870 pages. And this was in January, so that really added to it. And then my shortest book was Overshare by Charlotte Frears, which was 32 pages, and that was just a little poetry book that she self-published. She is a fellow booktuber. I'll have a link down to her channel down below, but yeah. I can't believe I've skipped that. But yeah, so for example, in January, that's why the page count was so high, because it was rereads, so I was reading it faster, and then also like the Shadowhunter books, I was just flying through them so fast. So, first pie chart we're going to talk about is my star ratings. As you can see, I have a majority 5 stars, which is interesting. I bet that a lot of those books probably don't deserve 5 stars retrospectively, but I just feel like when I put a book down and I absolutely love it, I'm like, okay, it's 5 star. But I have been getting better. I feel like 2019 especially, this was even higher. Like I feel like 2019 I was so bad at rating books, whereas this year I've been much more comfortable giving books 2 stars and 3 stars. And obviously the 2-star bit is still pretty small with only 5.6%. But I don't know, I just I feel like I have been getting better at being a bit more critical, because before I was giving absolutely everything 4 or 5 stars. And although, I mean, that's still the highest percentage of this pie chart, I don't know, I feel like I am being a little bit more critical, and it's still something I would like to work on and like be like, okay, you know what, this book does deserve 2 stars. Because I still feel bad when I do that. The 0 stars is just the poetry books I read. I don't rate poetry. I just don't really know how, to be honest. And oh, sorry, I sneezed. Yeah, I just don't really know how to rate poetry, to be honest. So my book format, I have majority physical books with 71.6%. This isn't an issue for me. I enjoy physical books more than ebooks and audiobooks, to be honest. And the only reason I would want to change this a little bit is that I do have a lot of ebooks in my collection on my Kindle. Sorry, I still have COVID technically, so I'm a bit like thinged. But yeah, so ebooks, 25 ebooks is still pretty good, I would say. That's 50. Was only 15.4%, which is obviously smaller than I would expect, but I don't know. Audiobooks, I'm really got into audiobooks this year. Before 2021, I wasn't really an audiobook person. I'd like dabbled here and there, but this year I've been like really enjoying audiobooks, and I'm definitely going to do a video recommending my favourite audiobooks that I read or listened to in 2021. So if we go down to page count, as you can see, this is where the average thing really makes sense, because I just was going for all the short books this year. Like, I don't know what that is altogether, but over 3/4 of the pie chart is under 400 pages. And I mean, like 16.7% is under 100 pages. That's 27 books that are under 100 pages. And I mean, obviously like I enjoy those Penguin Moderns, but I feel like, I don't know, I just want to make sure I'm going for bigger books and worrying less about the amount of books I've read this year and more just about like what I'm actually enjoying. And well, I mean, I am enjoying the shorter ones as well, but I just need to stop being so scared of reading big books. It's the time commitment to them that puts me off. I'm like, why would I read this 600-page book when I could read 3 200-page books in that same time? You know, but I just need to get out that mindset, and I'm really trying. Like in January, I've read like quite a lot of big books so far in January, so I don't know. I would like to see this change. I would like to read bigger books again. There's some books I want to read that are over 1,000 pages, but I don't know, I'm too scared to do it. My year of release, okay, this doesn't actually make sense if you break down the categories, but this was how I done it. So 1700s I read 1 book, 1800s I read 13 books, 1900 and 1949, 28 books, 1950 to 1999, 43 books. So over half of the books I read, just over half though, were released before 2000. And you know, I actually feel like I've been moving away from classics a little bit. My channel used to be majority just classics, but I have been, you know, moving away from that a little bit, and I do really love classics, but more modern classics recently, which I think really reflects in the fact that there's only 14 books that were released before 1900. So yeah, I don't really have an issue with this. I split it up in like purple and green so you can see like modern versus less modern. Not that like, you know, the 1990s isn't modern because that's literally when I was born, but yeah, I don't know. I just think this one's interesting because in my head I am like a majority classics person, but here you're seeing like that's not technically true anymore. So I read 12 books that were released in 2021, and that's so strange to me because I don't keep up with new releases at all. And if you asked me to name what all these 12 books are, I could not do it. So I just thought it was interesting that I actually read quite a few books that were released in 2021, and actually probably should look up what they are. But yeah, I don't know. I thought this was interesting just because in my head I'm like, oh, I read classics all the time, and well, that is true. I am reading a lot of modern books as well. So the age category of the books that I've read, I struggle with this one because, for example, those 5 children books are all classics. It's like Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, what's the other one? The Princess and the Goblin. I don't know. There's some other ones where like realistically today, like they'd be put in middle grade. Majority of them, I would say. Like children could not read, say like Peter Pan like that. Alice in Wonderland I did read as a child, so I guess that one's fine. But Peter Pan, I just can't imagine like a child sitting reading that. Like it's big, it's complicated in times, you know. So that's what those children books are. The middle grade one is the same. I read 5 middle grade books. That was the first 3 Harry Potters. Race for the Sun, which was an Indigenous author, Rebecca Roanhorse. I don't know what the other one was. Young adult is a category that I do really enjoy young adult, but I'm glad it's where it is, you know what I mean? Like, I'm glad that the majority of my books were adult, because, I mean, I am an adult, and I don't mean that in a way, like, if you are reading all young adult, I don't care, like, you do you, but I just prefer adult books now, to be honest, and young adult books are more just, like, they're just fun, you know, like, they prop up my reading, they make me read faster, and they, you know, if I'm really dragging myself through some classics, I'm like, okay, I'll pick up a young adult, you know, reinvigorate my love for reading. Genre, this is a mess. I probably could have thingied this down a little bit and made it more concise, but as you can see, the majority of the books I read are fantasy, and I actually read a lot of historical fiction as well, and a lot of contemporary, although contemporary is an interesting one because a lot of the classics that I read, I put them in contemporary because I'm like, okay, for the time they were released, they were probably contemporary, but contemporary is a like a genre that I just kind of designate books to when I don't know what else to put them in. Sci-fi is actually quite high as well. I read 14 sci-fi books, and yeah, I think this is fun. I obviously have a very wide reading taste. I actually got a lot into non-fiction this year. I have 11 non-fiction, and we'll break down the non-fictions in the next slide, I think it is, or in one of the slides anyway. But yeah, I don't have an issue with this. I love every genre. Like, there's not one genre that I would say like I don't want to read at all. I just read everything, you know what I mean? Like, I have poetry this year. I really got into poetry. Romance, I honestly do enjoy a good romance. We have some erotica, which right now I'm actually currently reading 50 Shades of Grey. Dystopian, I thought I read more dystopian than that. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how the dystopian is so small, with only 3. I thought I read more than that, but anyway, let's move on. So, do I own the books that I'm reading? 92% of the books I read, I own, which is 150, and that's including ebooks as well. So that is a lot of books, and I'm like, how do I actually, like, if you ask me how many books I own, that's insane to me. To be honest, I actually am really surprised at that. 3 books that I read were from Audible Plus. 5 of them were my dad's. 3 were from the library, and only 1 was online. That was like Heartstopper. That's quite sad about the library. I honestly do love going to the library, but I just haven't used it this year, and I really do want to get back into using it more, but I don't know. And I see the fun thing about the library one, I can't remember what books it was now, but when I was putting these together, I looked and, oh, it was Rebecca and Frenchman's Creek, and I actually own both of those now. And so yeah, it's just, I don't know. Like, I'm glad I'm reading the books that I own, but also, I don't know, I just want to use the library more. I really like the library. I think it's a good resource, so I should try and do that more. The publishing method, digital was, I'm pretty sure, Heartstopper, and Cassandra Clare released like a little free digital download, like ebook type thing. So technically they're both self-published as well, but I just like decided to split up a little bit. So 10 of the books I read this year were self-published, and 152 of them were traditional. I actually don't think that's that bad. Like, I would like to have more than that. I would like to definitely reach at least 12 this year. But considering a lot of people don't read self-published at all, I think it's okay. Yeah, it's definitely one I just want to keep working on. I do really love self-published books. I think there's some amazing self-published books out there. So I want to keep trying to read more. Where are the books that I read new reads or rereads? 12.3% of them were rereads, so that's 20. And then 142 of them were not. I actually thought it was going to be higher. I was surprised at this. I thought I'd already read a lot more than that. But, you know, that's a perfectly fine number. And I think a headset I had to get out of was feeling guilty about doing rereads. For a while I was like, why would I reread this when, you know, there's new books I've spent money on or someone's spent money on for me and I'm not reading them. But I mean, they're not going to go out of date. There's no expiry date there. You know, I can read them whenever. And if I want to reread something because I love it, like, why shouldn't I? Type of book. So this is more like a breakdown of like the non-fiction stuff, for example. So we have 1 biographical, 5 collections of essays, 4 memoirs, 2 graphic novels, 3 mangas, 7 poetry books, 17 short story collections, and 1 webcomic. A lot of, like, for example, the short stories, the essays, the biographical, and a couple of the poetry is from that Little Penguin Mini Moderns collection, because they're just like such a interesting collection of different pieces of writing. And then 75% of my stuff is novels, and I'm perfectly happy with that. You know, I prefer novels. I actually don't even like short stories that much, so it's interesting that there's so many. But I guess it's just because of that collection of, you know, the Penguin Moderns. My author gender, I'm not super unhappy with this, but I would like it to be more 50-50 next year. So 39.6% of the authors I read were female and 59.5% were male. Like I said though earlier as well, and one was just various, that was like a short story collection that had multiple thingies in it, authors. It's just like interesting to me that, you know, I am reading more male authors, but it's the female authors that I'm loving more. Like, it's the female authors that are all my favourite authors. So I don't know, I think that's kind of okay, but I would definitely prefer it was more like 50-50 next year. My author birth country, this is my final slide. This is a lot to process, but basically, as you can see, only 38.7% of the authors I read this year were from the USA. And I'm so happy with that. I was really trying to move away from just reading American authors, and as you can see, I did read a lot of different authors. 12.6% of them were from England. That was the other country I wanted to read less of. So when you add them together, 50% of my authors were still from the USA or England. But I still think that is like a really good starting off place, and I just want to continue in 2022 to just read from a variety of different countries. Like, if you go to my top 10 books of 2021 video, only 2 of the books on there were from American authors and 8 of them were from elsewhere. So, you know, I'm just loving like reading all these different authors from different countries, and there's so many authors and so many books out there that I just don't want to restrict myself to just reading like books from the USA. Scotland, I only read 7 Scottish authors. It's not the best. I do definitely again want to reach 12. I'm going to really try this year to really hit like 12 different Scottish authors. And I mean, if you broke that into books by Scottish authors, I read more than 7. I think I probably read about 10. But yeah, I don't know. I just want to do better there. But yeah, I'm really happy with this. Japan, for example, I read 10 books by Japanese authors. What other ones are big? France, I read 8 books. Yeah, there's just a lot of countries there, like Vietnam, Tibet. What else would you not expect? Austria. Russia, I read 5. I love Russian authors. I love Russian authors. I've already read 2 Russian authors this year. I've only read 6 books this year. So yeah, I just think that one I'm actually really proud of, and I'm glad that, you know, I am achieving my goal of reading authors from different countries. So that's all my slides. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, please subscribe. I am just gonna upload this basically as it is with like the images uploaded. I am not doing cuts and stuff for this video. I cannot be bothered. I still have COVID. That's my excuse for everything now. I'm like, I still have COVID, as if I even feel unwell. I don't really. I mean, I haven't even coughed during this whole video, which is kind of cool. But yeah, if you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I will see you in my next video.